Part 4 of your text, Critical Thinking, Reading and Writing by Barnett and Badeau, introduces the idea of the ideal society. In this section of the text, there are 6 readings that span history from the 1500s to the 1970s. In each of these selections, many controversial issues are addressed that are still relevant in today's world. By critically reading and reflecting on these selections, you will be able to identify these issues and choose one that you would like to research. These issues will be the subject of your upcoming position paper. This week, we will be discussing the reading selections related to the ideal society. We will also be identifying important relevant issues, one of which you will choose to research over the next few weeks. You will explore the information available about your issue from numerous perspectives. It is important that you evaluate the information and reach a conclusion or take a position. Finally, you will be reflecting on the process that you went through to reach your conclusion, the possible limitations of your conclusion, and the conditions under which you might reconsider your conclusion. Let me give you a brief overview of the Ideal Society readings and provide some questions for reflection. More's Utopia is the tale of a traveler who visits a town called Utopia and describes the society that he finds there. In Utopia, everyone works for the common good. The result of this practice is that everyone enjoys a good life. Moore talks of the wastefulness of most societies and how with all members of society contributing, no one has to work terribly hard. Human beings want to be happy and seek pleasure, which is highly valued in Utopia. People are also assisted in ending their life if they have an incurable disease that is causing constant excruciating pain. Consider these questions as you ponder More's Utopia. More indicates that in the England of his day, many people loafed or engaged in unnecessary work, putting an enormous burden on those who engaged in useful work. Is this condition, or any part of it, true of our society? What arguments can you offer for or against the utopian's treatment of persons who are incurably ill and in pain? What current controversial issues are reflected in this selection? In The Prince, Machiavelli discusses the virtues and vices of an effective ruler. When describing generosity and miserliness, he states that a generous prince runs the risk of using up his resources. This could lead to excessive taxes and an inability to defend himself from anyone who makes war against him. Thus, Machiavelli concludes that it is better to be miserly. When discussing cruelty and mercy, he states that a ruler must keep order and that those who attempt to show mercy on an individual may harm the community at large. When considering if it is better to be feared or loved, Machiavelli states it is much safer to be feared than to be loved, because men are fickle, love is fleeting, and fear remains. He also believes that promises can be broken if the reasons which may demand promise are removed, and that the appearance of virtue is more important than virtue itself, since ordinary man is deceived by appearances. Consider these questions as you ponder Machiavelli's The Prince. In the opening paragraph, Machiavelli claims that a ruler who wishes to keep in power must learn how not to be good, that is, must know where and when to ignore the demands of conventional morality. Can you think of any recent political event in which a political leader violated the requirements of morality, as Machiavelli advises? Can you think of recent episodes supporting or disproving the view that cruelty can be beneficial to society? Machiavelli declares that one must consider the final result. Do you think that he means any end, goal, or purpose of anyone justifies using any means to reach it? Give an example of this from today's society or government. What current controversial issues are reflected in this selection? The Declaration of Independence was drafted by Thomas Jefferson and revised by the Committee of Five, who were elected to write the document. This document outlines the rights of all men, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and of the states to establish their own government. Separation from English rule is based on the facts given regarding the actions of the king against the states. Consider these questions as you ponder the Declaration of Independence. What current controversial issues are reflected in this document? The Declaration cites certain unalienable rights and mentions three: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What is an unalienable right? What duties, if any, go with these rights? Consider why a certain group is entitled to independence. You may want to argue that adolescents should not be compelled to attend school, that animals should not be confined to zoos, or that persons who use drugs should be able to buy them legally. Elizabeth Cady Stanton followed the format of the Declaration of Independence to address the Women's Rights Convention held in Seneca Falls, New York in 1848. She proposed that all men and women are created equal, and that women under the government of the day had suffered injury at the hands of man. After some debate and amendment by other prominent women, her document was adopted and became the platform for the women's rights movement in this country. Consider these questions as you ponder the Declaration of Sentiments and Resolutions. What current controversial issues are reflected in this document? Stanton's declaration is over 155 years old. Have all the issues she raised been satisfactorily resolved? If not, which ones remain? In our society, children have very few rights. For instance, a child cannot decide to drop out of elementary or high school, and a child cannot decide to leave his or her parents and reside with some other family that he or she finds more compatible. Compose a Declaration of the Rights of Children. Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous speech, "I Have a Dream," was delivered from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. in 1963, the 100th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation. King's audience consisted of over 200,000 people who had come to demonstrate for civil rights. King states that the Negro is still not free 100 years after slavery, and that the time has come for America to honor its obligation to the black people. He professes that this must be done in a peaceful way, and he describes his dream that his 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, and all men will be free at last. I have included a link in the Week 13 folder to a YouTube video so that you can watch and listen to the inspiring full version of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech, "I Have a Dream." Consider these questions as you ponder King's "I Have a Dream." What current controversial issues are reflected in this speech? King says that his dream is deeply rooted in the American dream. What is the American dream? Was the dream in 1963 the same dream we have today? King delivered his speech more than 40 years ago. Is the speech still relevant? Has the black community achieved equality in America? The story "The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas" by Ursula K. Le Guin presents a moral dilemma. The story begins by describing the festival of summer, a joyous celebration of life. The author talks about happy children and mature, intelligent, passionate adults. The dilemma is presented when Le Guin introduces the character of one lonely, miserable child who must endure an agonizing and lonely existence to ensure the happiness of all the others. How can the people of Omelas be happy knowing that the child exists? How can they accept their fortune at the expense of another's misery? Some cannot, and walk away from Omelas, realizing that there they can never be truly happy or free. Consider these questions as you ponder Le Guin's "The The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. What current controversial issues are reflected in this story? Do you think the story implies a criticism of contemporary American society? Explain it using specific examples. There are many topics discussed in the reading that you have done about the ideal society that are still relevant in today's world. Topics such as healthcare, marriage, religion, education, the economy, civil rights, and the legal system. In utopia, everyone is given health care, and euthanasia is practiced and encouraged. In utopia, marriage is respected, and divorce is permitted only in cases of abuse and adultery. Adultery is a crime, and violators are punished as criminals. In utopia, atheism is considered immoral, but other forms of religious expression are tolerated. In utopia, all people are educated. In utopia, criminals are not executed, but rather condemned to slavery. Utopia also offers asylum to criminals sentenced to death in other countries. The issues listed here are all still relevant in today's society. In The Prince, Machiavelli discusses how a government should behave to be successful, and whether the end justifies the means. In fighting terrorism, are we justified in using torture to obtain information that may save lives? In the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson argues that the colonists are entitled to certain things under certain conditions, can behave in a certain way to gain their independence. Can we draw parallels to rights for minors in today's society? In the Declaration of Sentiments and Resolutions, Elizabeth Cady Stanton addresses the rights of women. Are there any women's rights issues in modern society? In his speech, I Have a Dream, Martin Luther King Jr. inspired people to imagine a world free of discrimination. Discrimination can take many forms, one of which is sexual orientation. In The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas, Ursula Le Guin explores the ethical dilemma of accepting happiness that is dependent on the suffering of others. What is our responsibility as individuals and as a nation? Think about what you believe the perfect society would look like today, and consider these possible topics for your research. This week's assignment will consist of 2 parts. Part 1 is to select one of the ideal society readings on which you would like to focus. On a separate sheet of paper, answer one of the questions for reflection about your selected reading. Note that you do not need to answer one question about each selection, just one question, period. You may look back through this PowerPoint to choose your question for reflection, or download the document in the Week 13 folder entitled Guidelines for Position Paper. This document describes parts 1 and 2 of the assignment, which you will complete this week, and also describes part 3, the actual position paper, which will be due the last week of this class. Part 2 of the assignment is to choose a controversial issue about which you are passionate that is relevant to today's society. Then you will answer the following questions. What is the issue? Is this issue related in any way to one of the readings? How does it relate? Why are you interested in this issue? How is it relevant to our society? How does your stand on this issue contribute to an ideal society? The issue that you choose will be the topic of your position paper. Over the next few weeks, you will be doing research to find evidence and support for your conclusion. Next week, I will provide information on how to write argument, MLA style, where to go to find reliable information, and how to evaluate what you find, all information competency skills. Through this position paper, you will demonstrate the ability to put into practice all the things you've learned this semester, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and synthesizing. You are now operating as a critical thinker at the highest levels of Bloom's taxonomy.